webinar. I'm Brooke Contreras with ScriptSender, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. Our topic today is about an innovative automated approach to enable a virtual, secure, one-click interoperability of referrals and prior authorizations for your radiology practice. If you have any questions during the presentation, just write them in the chat box and we will review them at the end of the discussion. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our two presenters today. First, Jim Birchfield, who joined ScriptSender in 2016, is the Senior Vice President of Sales and Business Development. Jim's focus is on strategizing with channel partners, identifying OEMs, and creating and growing national accounts. Jim has almost 30 years of experience across a wide spectrum of imaging and healthcare informatics, including imaging modalities, PACS, RIS, advanced visualization, and enterprise imaging. Our second presenter today, David Bird, is VP of Growth and Strategy at Infinix and is responsible for defining and executing the overall business development strategy. He has over 20 years of experience in driving inorganic and organic growth, market differentiation, product marketing, and client engagement. Thank you. Over to you, Jim.
Okay, thanks, Brooke, and thanks everyone who's able to attend today. First of all, I'd like to start off by thanking our partner, Infinix. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with. The team is sophisticated and experienced in their technology. We've been working together for the last 3 years, and we've got a solution that we're going to demonstrate for you today that is something that we see in almost every one of our transactions. A high demand for this. It's been a manual workflow that has been a significant challenge to our clients, and with what we're going to demonstrate today, you'll see how we overcome that with full automation. Quick overview of who ScriptSender is. We've been in this interoperability business for the last almost 10 years now. We've done significant advancements in the interoperability, emphasizing our strength in HL7 and bringing the referral-based workflow to the furnishing providers. We have an HL7 engine in the architecture of our solution, which allows us to integrate any solution on the marketplace. We've always driven our development around customer requirements. It's important to be able to address the customer needs because our CEO was actually CIO of a radiology group and understands the challenges that the furnishing provider groups face. He sat in your chair, walked in your shoes, and realized that with patient referral workflows, there's significant challenges and it's unique to each practice. So he's constantly improving the product line. We have a robust roadmap that we continue to add functionality month to month and roll it out to our client base and to the market. Some of the modules that we'll emphasize today are our bread and butter. Our flagship products are the ScriptSender and ReportSender. For today's demonstration, we'll be emphasizing ScriptSender, which is our inbound integration. It accomplishes the same level of integration that providers would get from an purchasing an HL7 interface from an EMR vendor without the high cost associated with that. It's a very simple deployment, and we'll show you how that works. It's augmented by our new technology that's been released during COVID 2020 called ADAM, our Advanced Data Automation Manager, and does not require any change in the behavior of a referring physician. Some of the additional modules that we have are listed here on the screen. The ones that you'll see during our demonstration today of the integration between Infinix and ScriptSender for prior authorization will be at the top, ADAM, which I just mentioned. This is really, if you think about it, like any of the tasks that your clerical or administrative staff perform currently, we can automate those steps with ADAM. Translation services is what we like to refer to as the magic behind the system. It is our data management, it's our data mapping, it's our parsing engine, it's our parsing templates, it's the normalization of the data, it's our AI, it's our machine learning. Everything that happens on the back end is run through translation services. And of course, the third-party integrations, we've developed workflows and automated them with several partners on the marketplace. in particular prior authorization, which is what we'll show today. So this, excuse me, this slide that we're showing is a depiction of what we see across our current customer base. We run across this, and it doesn't vary much from any particular provider. Really, you have inbound documents from a referring physician, and you have outbound documents to the referring physician. And there really are two alternatives to address that. Either someone's going to pay for a very expensive HL7 integration, or you end up faxing, and that's what most people end up doing, is faxing. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, you see the value prop that ScriptSender brings to this workflow and how we can automate that. First of all, we're going to eliminate the need for any more additional HL7 interfaces, because the solution that we provide is essentially providing the same solution that an HL7 interface will provide by bringing the data in as an HL7 message. So we'll go through that more in the demonstration. More importantly, everyone on this call can probably relate to the inefficient workflows associated with faxes. There's phone calls back and forth, there's missing data, there's fax lines, and overall it's manual data entry that just delays and makes the overall process inefficient. For DVD production, this is more related to just the radiology market space, so we'll skip over that. In the lower right-hand corner is something that I think I'd like to point out is one of the more important attributes of our system. ScriptSender never installs software on the client side. We just don't do that. We make our solution it to run on the server, and it runs within any browser. It doesn't matter if it's Safari, Chrome, Firefox, i.e. whatever it may be, and there's no browser restrictions. We're not doing any plugins, no Java, no ActiveX, nothing like that. And because we're not installing any software, there's no administrative rights required. We can simply deploy this to any solutions running on the server, and we emulate the existing workflow for that referring physician. What I mean is, anytime that you have to ask a referring physician to change their behavior in ordering, it just makes it more difficult for them, and it's very unlikely that they'll change their behavior. So we try to make every solution that we have to integrate their EMR to the furnishing provider's information system with one click, and also so that the workflow, the workflow emulates exactly the way they do things currently. One of the big questions we get is, how do you deploy the solution out? We've noted that in many of our experiences that the furnishing providers are challenged by getting physicians to adopt a new solution. So we've partnered with that furnishing provider by working together very strategically with their marketing team. We identify and select sites based upon different considerations, and then together we deploy this out. And again, everything's done in one step, but you want the referring physician to be very comfortable. So we provide everything from marketing collateral, brochures that can be left behind, through webinars, remote training. We've even done luncheons and dinners for everyone, but it's a very collaborative approach so that we take that pressure off of the furnishing provider, so that we can team up with them to make sure that their adoption is maximized. So let's roll over to the demonstration. And the first thing I'll start off is, how do we get this solution deployed out to the referring physician? Well, very simply, this is a landing page that I'm showing on my screen that allows the referring physician to enable the ScriptSender solution for any inbound document. So it's not limited to just orders, it's any information. So even when you consider the fact that the referring physicians have an interface, if they've paid for an interface, they may only be receiving one sort of message type, and the rest of the documents supporting that interpretation or that treatment plan or that diagnosis, those end up being faxes. With ScriptSender, our solution, because we're going to enable a virtual print driver, we can take every single document that they would send to that furnishing provider and provide a workflow for it. So we are actually a better solution than what you would get with an HL7 interface. So the very first step would be this big blue button. So they would enable this, and we could give them access through this URL. We can email it, we can put it on a portal page. But you can see, since I'm running in Chrome is my browser, there's a browser dialog box, and I would just accept those boxes, and you will see that the BAT file ran, and we loaded a print driver. And you can say there's the print driver has been enabled. So again, we're not installing any software. We're just enabling a print driver. So the print drivers already exist. When we enable this, we're telling this print driver now to point to this URL. And you can see a couple things that about this URL are unique. First of all, it's branded. So whatever name the furnishing provider wants, they can put in this so that it's recognizable for the referring physician right away. The other thing you see is it's HTTPS, so it's completely secure. It's SSL encrypted, and it's much more secure than any fax that would be sent. And it's as secure. It's the highest level of encryption on the marketplace. It's as secure as any portal they're currently using. Most importantly, this is what's different about ScriptSender and any other solution. There's virtual printers on the marketplace, there's no doubt, but they provide a PDF, they provide a picture, an image, something that is static, and it's something that still requires the manual workflows associated with nothing more than an electronic fax. So someone still is tied to that workflow. With ScriptSender, just like a printer, we're receiving PostScript data, and this is what differentiates us. We take the PostScript data and we can create any type of message. We can create HL7, XML, FIRE, whatever's required, we can create that message because we're dealing with data, and we'll show you how that works. So once the print driver is enabled, the referring physician is now able to send any document that they want into that furnishing provider. So how do they do it? Well, this is an example of an EMR. It's not my software. It's not ScriptSender software. This is Practice Fusion. We have a demo version that we run for demonstrations and webinars like this. And this is where the referring physician does their work and their consultation with their patients. So in this case, we'll select a patient and we'll understand that we want to refer this patient. Perhaps he's complaining of chest pain. So we want to send him for some imaging. So we're going to create an electronic order that we can refer this patient out, and we're going to select the study that we want to refer, in this case, a chest CT with high resolution with contrast. And we want to give it a code. So we're going to say that there's acute chest pain and apply the appropriate code. Then, as I had mentioned earlier, none of their behavior changed. This is how they would always create an order or a referral. If it was a lab, it would be a very similar workflow. If it was a pharmacy script, it would be a very similar workflow. In this case, it's an imaging order, so they've created the order and they're going to print. And in this case, this is the print, and I just want to show that what we're handling here is data. So we recognize the data, this PostScript data, and that's what allows us to parse it, apply the appropriate template, and then create the formatted HL7 message for the receiving platform. In this case, it could be a radiology information system, but it's also going to be the Infinix prior auth software. So that's what differentiates us from any other virtual printer. They're still going to send just a picture, an image, a PDF that someone manually handles. With ScriptSender, we're going to use data to create formatted HL7 messages. So nothing's changed for the referring physician. Instead of selecting their fax service that they would normally send this referral off with, they're going to select a patient, the patient referral, or the furnishing physician's printer, and they select print, and that's it. Their workflow hasn't changed. They've just submitted an electronic order, and it doesn't change any of their behavior. But on the receiving side, they have actually received a formatted HL7 message that goes automatically into the workflow for, in this case, a radiology information system. It could be a pharmacy information system. It could be a lab information system. It could be an EMR. But that formatted message goes directly into that workflow. There's no manual data entry required. Additionally, we also recognize if there's missing information, and we have technology that I mentioned earlier called Atom that can retrieve from the EMR additional information. So now we have the order that has been sent in. So in this case, what's very important about this order is that this is an order. The reason that we selected this order is this is an order that requires prior authorization. So what we'll do is with an order like this, in order to have a successful, fully automated prior authorization through Infinex, this order needs to have accompanying information like the clinical note. So what we'll do is I'm just going to minimize this application for you for a moment. And you should see my desktop. And normally in the background, Atom would be running. So, but I'm going to show you how Atom runs so you can see how we get that clinical note and send it to the Infinex prior authorization workflow. So I'm just going to start our Atom, and what I'll do so that you can see how this works is I'm going to put the logs off to the side here, and you'll see Atom running and all the steps that Atom does in order to get the clinical note so that we can send it along with the order to the prior auth workflow. So normally, again, this is already done. It's running in the background, but we'll just start these services and you'll see how this occurs. So I'm just going to start Atom, and you saw the splash screen pop up there. And now Atom's going to log into the EMR, just like we did. So it is a credentialed user that's provided by the referring physician. So it's only authorized with the permissions that they've given that credentialed user login. And it also it can be audited. So they know exactly what's happening. So it's completely HIPAA compliant, very secure, but it performs all the steps of the user. So that's a big value add to them to provide this technology, because they now have an automated user and they don't have to do these steps. So you see that Atom already has recognized the patient record number for the printed order that we had. You see it over here in the log. It says PRN WD 772690. It enters that and it finds the chart for the patient Dan Wheeler that we created the electronic order for. Automatically, it goes through the same steps a human being would normally have to do, and it deselects any information that's not required for the clinical note, and then it prints the clinical note. And so once you see that disappear from your screen, we've just received into ScriptSender that data that now we can create an HL7 message for that clinical note, and we can provide the order and the clinical note to Infinex. So let me show you how that has occurred. So I'm going to log into ScriptSender, and this is our user interface. You can see in the upper right-hand corner that I'm logged in as a system administrator, and I have a lot of functionality across the top here. But I'm in a section, a tab called Document Management. And I'm just going to refresh this page. And what you'll see is that the first two lines here show the workflow that I just went through. So here's at 2:16 East Coast time is the order that we created, and I'll show you that. So there's the order that we created electronically in Practice Fusion. And here's the clinical note. So we have all the information that we need for a prior authorization. You can also see here there's a column called prior authorization. And we have color-coded scheme that allows you to understand the workflow from a system admin. And you can see that with the blue button, there's prior auth details. So if we select that button, you'll see that the case has been received. What does that mean? Well, before I go into this, let me describe these buttons at the bottom, because these normally would never appear to the end user. This display at the bottom shows the workflow, the integration, if you will, between Infinix prior authorization and Script Sender. So this is our interface to the two systems. And so you see that there's webhooks going back and forth. The first webhook that occurred, this first blue button, was the order that was sent through. And that was the case that was received. The second workflow step would be the clinical notes that we received. So I'll just select that for a moment and you'll see the screen will refresh. Now, please keep in mind that this all occurs behind the scenes. This is not something that no one has to click these buttons. The interface between Script Sender and Infinix automatically does this as they receive the data. So let's just go back to that prior auth, and what you'll see is the order was received with the time associated there, the timestamp, date timestamp, and then also the clinical note was received. The case is now being reviewed, and you see the status has changed to payer review. So once they have the payer review acknowledged and they have the case approved, the webhook would then be performed in Infinix and sent back to Script Sender. And now what you see here is the color coding has changed. So it's no longer blue, it's green. It has, when I hover over it, it says prior auth completed. And so if you were logged in as an administrator here, you would see that, okay, I have a prior auth that's completed. Let me take a look at that. And there's all the information that you have. The status is approved. The prior authorization number has been provided, and there's every one of the steps that happened in the integration. What's important to point out here, the most important thing I can point out from this demonstration actually, is that all of these steps are something that in a current environment without this integration, every one of these steps is done manually. So when you have an order that's sent in, normally, manually, someone has to update and manually upload that order. The second thing they have to do is now get on the phone and dial that referring physician and say, thank you for your order. Can you please send the clinical note so we can get the prior authorization completed for this patient? They may get a hold of them right away. They may be put on hold. They may get it in a day or 2 or 3. With Adam pulling and printing that clinical note, we've fully automated that step. So we've printed an HL7 message into Infinix and into the information system platform. We've automated the process for the clinical note and printed that and created the HL7 message that's shared with Infinix prior authorization and the information system platform. And we've also got the approval that now we can document throughout the process. We can send notifications across any parts of these workflows to anyone that would be desired. So if we wanted to send this authorization number back to the referring physician, we could also automate that as well. So we've fully automated the workflows from order. We've changed none of the behavior for the referring physician. All they have to do is hit print, and we have a fully automated prior authorization workflow. Okay, so with that, I am going to bring us back to the presentation and pass this off to David Bird to discuss Infinix. David?
Thanks, Jim. And I just want to thank the audience for joining us today. For those of you that aren't familiar with Infinix, we were founded in the same year as Script Sender, 2012, so we've been around about 9 years. We're based out of San Jose, California. Our focus is on RCM and patient access. We have over 700 sites across the country, from large to small, such as HCA. RadNet was one of our first radiology customers. Our roots started out in radiology, so we have a pretty good foothold in radiology and RCM services and prior authorizations. Now, go ahead, Jim, you can switch to the next one. So I think everybody knows the challenges of prior authorizations. It's probably why you're here on the webinar today. when you look at the payer environment and how they impact the workflow, it kind of trickles down or has a domino effect into claims denial. You suffer from turnaround time, which could cause patient experience problems. And all these things combined add significant cost to the prior authorization workflow and process. But in imaging, what we found specifically as healthcare becomes more of a consumer-generated environment is it's coming down to patient experience. And if you can't get a prior auth in a timely manner, you're going to lose that patient, or what we call patient abandonment. And again, that impacts the top line of the imaging center or the practice. So if you could move to the next slide, Jim. So what we've done is we've created an augmented process, and we believe that combining human intelligence with artificial intelligence and a subject matter expert or a specialist is how you tackle the prior authorization workflow. Software alone won't handle it. And this is our philosophy, because if you only have a software solution, as Jim pointed out, making phone calls, following up with referring physicians, or having to fax things, that's pushing a burden back to our customer. So our approach is we take artificial intelligence and machine learning to learn those mundane processes that humans usually do, and automate those through artificial intelligence. And the way that I like to explain AI is just rules that mimic human behavior. Machine learning is an algorithm that watches the human behavior, learns from it through statistical trend lines, and then the AI comes on top of that and mimics it. So you guys probably understand the prior authorization workflow process better than I do, but you can understand where certain things fall down in that workflow from an automation process, meaning if a payer changes a clinical pathway on the portal, or if a question or formats change on a portal, that's going to disrupt the software automation. And it's our belief that that's where a human specialist can jump in, take control over that automation failure, so to speak, and answer those questions or address that, there's been a question changed or a format change on the portal, and then the automation can pick back up and get the prior authorization information back to the physician. So if you want to go to the next slide, Jim. So Jim kind of went over this during the demo, but I'll just reiterate it. So ScriptSender pulls the clinical documentation from the referring provider through the EMR. They digitize the order, as Jim showed you. That order comes to us, and then we request the prior authorization either through the insurance company or through a benefit manager. Once we get that information back, we push the information to ScriptSender, and that information goes back into the rendering or furnishing provider. But to get into more detail on how we actually do this, if you can go to the next slide, Jim. We have a 4-step process, and it looks like the numbering's off on this. It should be 1, 2, 3, 4. But the first step is determination. And this is where we apply our artificial intelligence and machine learning to identify whether an authorization is needed or not. So we'll look at the patient information, the insurance, obviously, the data service, the ICD code, and the CPT code. And from that, we can determine whether an authorization is required or not. If it is required, then the second step is initiation. And what initiation does is it looks at that specific benefit manager or that specific payer and the required criteria that is needed to submit the prior auth. whether the clinicals are needed, what specific information is needed for that payer. Once that's determined, we submit it, we identify that the payer has received it, it's on file, and that it's being processed. And then from there, the follow-up, or what I like to call the alerting mechanism, where it identifies back into ScriptSender, because this is integrated, where that authorization is, whether it's been approved, whether there's additional clinicals required, whether there's a clinical review, or if there's even a peer-to-peer. All that information would flow back into ScriptSender, so it's a streamlined workflow. Next slide. So once we have this integrated process down, as you can see, the workflow becomes streamlined through the combination of the integration, the AI, and our human specialist. So you see faster turnaround times in radiology. We see 30 to 40% of authorizations getting approval almost in, I don't want to say in real time, but the same day. In other specialties, it ranges, but on average, within the overall radiology market, we see about a 24-hour turnaround time. Stats, we do same day, which will initiate in 30 minutes, and then we automate that process as well with our human specialist. Next slide, Jim. So it's our belief, if you just want to keep on going, Jim, that the best prior authorization solution combines the integration with augmented intelligence with a human specialist. We also provide analytics and transparency. And so what I mean by that is we have a dashboard that will identify the turnaround times of the prior auth, the highest procedures submitted by payer for prior authorizations, denials, if there's any denials, and then all that data can be exported into an Excel spreadsheet or Tableau, whatever type of BI you're using. So every single step and data within Infinex can be exported for further BI analytics, just outside of our dashboard as well. And with that, I think we'll turn it over for questions.
Okay, we did have some questions come through, but if anybody has not typed their question into the chat box, feel free to do that now, and I will catch those after I read off the first few. So first question, how long does it take to get integrated with ScriptSender and Infinex?
So,
Jim, you want to go first?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The deployment of our solution is really very simple. Once a server is stood up on the furnishing provider side, and that can happen within a few weeks, we'll have the interface already, and I say interface, established to their information system platform. So whether it's a RIS or a pharmacy information system or a lab information system or an EMR, whatever it may be, that's our first step. That usually takes a couple of weeks of just testing how they want to receive the data. So what formatted messages have data elements put into the proper positions and so forth. So once that's accomplished, the deployment out to the referring physician is very simple. The steps that we went through today, that really is the steps they would enable that print driver. And once that print driver is done, just like every other print driver they've ever enabled, you don't have to re-enable it. So once you have that enabled, you can send any document that you want. So it's really that one-click deployment out to the referring physician, and ScriptSender from that point on processes that data and transmits it to the appropriate receiving solution, whether it's the Infinex workflow for prior authorization, or if it's just going as an order to be scheduled within the information system platform. But it's really that easy. One click, they've got the inbound integration established.
Next question is, have you built relationships to third-party risks like Advanced Data Systems, Company of New Jersey?
Yes, absolutely. So we've been partnered with ADS for 5 years now. I think we're going on. They were one of our first partners, and they've deployed the solution out to a few of their clients already. But we have partnerships with most of the risk vendors on the marketplace, and you'd be hard pressed to find a risk vendor that we haven't worked with already.
Next question, how long does it take to configure Atom for the doctors? Are all EHRs supported?
Yeah, so the second question there is the easier. Yes, of course. But the qualifier of that is we can provide the Atom solution to any cloud-based EMR. However, the first part of that question was how long does it take? So once we have that credentialed user login, it's very important that we program Atom to do exactly what the steps a human being would execute to either print that chart or upload a report or whatever steps that you're going to program Atom to do. We have to program those exact same steps into Atom. So it could be a week, it could be a week and a half, could be 2 weeks, but it's not a significant period of time. And once it's tested and the customer has evaluated it, then it just runs from that point on.
Okay. This question might be for David. How many payers or benefit managers do you support today?
So we work with over 800 plus payers today, and some of those are full integration. Some of those are using bots and AI to connect to the portals. And then, the home plans we have integrations with as well. So overall, it's 800 plus.
Okay. And how many get approved on just sending clinical notes?
So that's a good question. I would probably have to get back to give you a specific number, but I would say, just based upon my knowledge, 90+% get approved with the clinical notes. As you know, the majority of prior auths need clinical documentation. The only reason I say 90+% is because on the higher level modalities, they may come back and say we want additional clinicals on the patient, such as history or something. But overall, the majority of those get approved. But again, I can follow up with a specific answer.
Post-authorization approval, is this update automatically assigned back to the clinical workflow or just queued to be scheduled?
That would flow back into Script Sender, if I understand the question correctly.
Could you say that one more time, Brooke?
Sure. Post-authorization approval, is this update automatically assigned back to the clinical workflow or just queued to be scheduled?
So what we'll do in most cases, it's customer driven requirement. If they decide that they want that authorization provided back to the EMR or to the physician, the referring physician, we can do that. We can do it through whatever means, if it's an email, SMS, text, or if it's actual notification to the EMR, we can send whatever workflow they desire, but it's usually decided in the implementation stage how we get that notification back if it's required.
Okay. Let's see. On those needing human intervention, is that done by you or the testing center?
On the prior authorization side?
Yeah, for you, David.
Yeah, so no, that's again, that's that, if you remember the slide, the three-prong approach slide, our specialist would jump in. We don't our philosophy is we don't want to push anything back to our customer. The only thing that we push back to our customer is peer-to-peer review for obvious reasons. But the specialist handles everything. Even if a prior auth is denied, then the specialist will jump in and try to identify why that prior auth was denied, if they needed additional clinicals, or if there was some reason data missing. Then the specialist would hand that and the automation would resubmit the prior auth. So really the only thing that our customers get involved with is peer-to-peer.
Let me just make sure I'm not missing any other questions.
There's a few that popped up in,
Okay, I see. Let's see. What is the average cost of a complete round trip order in? I believe that's for you, Jim.
so no, I think that's for the.
Oh, actually, yeah, because I'm sorry. It says, what is the average cost of a complete round trip order in through report out with auth? Sorry, it's broken up into a couple of messages. So.
No problem. So it's really based upon volume. So with our partnership with ScriptSender, it's a per prior auth fee, and then it just depends on your volume. So it's based upon true volume discount pricing.
One more, it looks like, do patients need to sign a waiver or consent form when using Atom?
No, so no, that's a good question. And whenever there's a concern that comes up about Atom, we really like to just express it as it's no different than one of the clerical staff that are providing the same services from the referring physician. So Atom is a credentialed user only with the permissions that have been given to that user to execute those steps. So it's completely HIPAA compliant as if it was a human being performing those same steps. So there's no patient consent required there.
Okay. Let me just make sure. If I happen to miss any questions, I think I got through all of them, but if I did miss something, give a couple seconds to let you post it again, just in case it got lost in the feed. But I think that is it. So I believe that concludes the webinar for today. So thank you so much for joining today's webinar. We will have a recording posted on both the Infinex website as well as the ScriptSender website. You can expect to see that up within the next 24 hours or so. And then, of course, feel free to reach out to either David or Jim if you do have additional questions that we were unable to answer today. Thank you, everyone.